one of the first sessions like this that we'll be doing. But we've already had some requests for people to access the recording. So if everybody now knows that the session's being recorded, we just got a little automated message to tell us as well. Hopefully everybody is okay with that. But I guess I'll hand over to Councillor Pepper to kick us off, and then you'll hear more from me and who I am in a sec.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Louise Pepper, your portfolio holder for equalities, and I would like to welcome everyone to Uttlesford's first community listening event. I would especially like to express our gratitude to the speakers for volunteering to talk bravely about their challenges and the struggles they have faced. This is an important step forward to listening to our local ethnic minority community and to hear firsthand about their challenges, as well as raising awareness and seeking the appropriate measures to address these serious issues. I hope you find the next hour and a half thought-provoking and want to be part of a bigger conversation in the future. I would like to pass you on to Hayley Bennett, who will outline the agenda and facilitate this evening's event. Thank you.
Thanks so much, and thanks everybody for being here and taking part. As we just shared, this is hopefully the first of many and the start of the conversation. So to properly introduce myself, you've heard me speak already. My name is Hayley Bennett. I'm a diversity and inclusion specialist. I do a lot of work in this space and have done for the past 8 years. Really excited to be part of this event and to hear from some amazing people, and hopefully from you as well. Before I set us up for the event, I would just like to share a little bit around housekeeping. When people are speaking, obviously, if you can mute yourself, it just helps to ensure that everybody can be heard properly. The other thing is, naturally, sometimes technical things can go wrong. We might lose our Wi-Fi. Don't worry too much about that. If that does happen, it's just something we need to accept as part of the times. And if you notice your own Wi-Fi is not cooperating, it's normally best to just switch off video or maybe come out of the meeting and come back in. We've got some great people we're going to hear from. You won't hear too much from me. My role really today is to facilitate the conversation and make sure that we navigate it in an effective way and most importantly, safely. We've got some great people who have volunteered to give up their time and their stories, which I really, really commend. It can be really hard to talk about your experiences. I think one thing to say really early on is that we often equate, being part of ethnic minority communities to, negative things like racism. But what's really important is that we use this as an opportunity to celebrate our identities as well, which we'll be touching on. So in terms of the agenda, we're going to kick off from starting a conversation. We've got some fabulous speakers who will introduce in a sec. Then we're going to hear from some presentations actually. And during this time, we'll hand over to you, give you the opportunity to share your thoughts. The best way for us to do that is to hear from the speakers and the presenters, and then I'll offer the opportunity for people to raise their hand. You can either do that literally, and I'll hopefully spot you on video, or there's a function on Zoom to do that as well. But just to set the scene for the event, I think it's, as we all know, it's really important that we have these conversations, but it's now more important than ever that we start this. Race-related hate crimes are still prevalent. In fact, they're on the rise. And there was actually a 15 to 20% rise in recorded hate crime following the EU referendum vote. Police data this year has said that there's been a 300% increase in hate crime reports from British, Chinese, East and Southeast Asians as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. We've also obviously seen in the news that minority ethnic communities have had a higher COVID-19 mortality rate. So there's a massive public health issue and how it intersects with race. We've also seen that Black, Asian and minority ethnic people have also suffered disproportionately from the job side in the pandemic as well. Their unemployment rate has been between 9.5% and 8.5% in the last quarter. So this is really recent data. And the unemployment rate for white workers has been 4.5%, so there's quite a big difference. According to the last census, and hopefully you all started to receive your census forms, Uttlesford is 95.4% white. Now that doesn't mean that we ignore that small percentage of people who are living amongst the community that have an important role in the community and have amazing stories to tell. We're looking forward to seeing what the new census will bring. But it's really important that we use this space today and further conversations to recognise the contributions that people from minority ethnic communities add to the community. and to understand people who might be experiencing marginalisation, discrimination, inequality. So that's really why we're here today, to start the conversation. We've said this a couple of times now, but it is just the beginning, but we're really keen to start this conversation off and hear from more of you. So I'm going to introduce our speakers. We've got 3 amazing women who've kindly volunteered to give up their time. We've got Marta, we've got Sanjukta, and we've got Sam. So I'm actually going to ask them all to introduce themselves and who they are. So what I would like us to do, if possibly, is just to start by introducing yourself and how long you've lived in Uttlesford. And I'm going to start with Marta.
First of all, I need to unmute myself. Hello, my name is Marta de Bruijn. Actually, it's Marta Mularska de Bruijn. I'm Polish, used to be married to a Dutch, hence the surname. I've been living around here for 14 years now, coming to 15. I moved here December 2006 from South London. Before that, I lived in the Netherlands, in Germany. I left Poland when I was 19.
Amazing, thanks so much for coming, and yeah, it's great to have you here, Marta. Sam, can we come to you next?
Yes, hello, I'm Samantha, or Sam. I've lived in Uttlesford for 7.5 years. I've lived most of my life in London, so I'm a Londoner really. So I'm also a parish councillor in my local area, in my community, and a volunteer. And I'm also a non-practicing solicitor, qualified in England and Wales. Thank you.
Amazing, Sam, thank you for coming, and thanks for that great introduction as well. And Sanjukta, last but not least.
Thank you, Hayley, for inviting me as well. I'm Sanjukta Ghosh, a historian by profession, and I have lived as well in London for a while, and then moved to Uttlesford for nearly 2 decades. And I'm the artistic director of SOAS South Asia Institute. I also serve in the Labour Party locally as policy and women's officer. And I have other affiliations in various other organizations as well where I work. So yeah, that's it really.
Amazing, thanks so much everybody for the introductions. It's really good to hear from, look how impressive what impressive panel speakers we've got. We will obviously get the opportunity to hear from as many of you as possible who have registered for the event too. We want the panelists to kick off the conversation. Before we do that, again, just wanted to re-emphasize to use the chat as much as possible. So for those of you who are not speaking, feel free to add your comments, thoughts in the chat. What I will say is, especially because this is one of the first events that we've had like this, is that sometimes having conversations that are relating to race or ethnicity can feel a little bit uncomfortable, and that's completely normal. In terms of how best we can navigate this is just to speak from our own experiences. Remember that the goal here is not to agree or disagree, it's actually to just listen and learn from other people's perspectives and experiences, and learn and understand more about the challenges that people face relating to race. So just honour and respect the different experiences that come to this space. So let's get started. Actually, I'm going to ask quite a deep question to begin with, and I know that the speakers know this is coming, and I'm really keen to hear from all of you. But I'd like to ask, how do you define yourself, and what does your identity mean to you? And I might start backwards again with Sanjukta this time. So how do you define yourself, Sanjukta, and what does your identity mean to you?
Well, you've thrown it, I was expecting to speak last, but never mind. Yeah, I mean, define myself. Obviously, gender-wise, I define myself as a woman, and I passionately promote women's issues and women's causes. My identity is obviously connected to where I was born. I'm an Indian by birth, and so my nationality till today remains one of Indian, and my passport is still one of Indian as well. But I've lived and worked in the UK for over 2 decades, and this has obviously influenced greatly my values as well as who I am today. So my roots are still Indian due to family connections, my place of birth, education, affinity to languages, faith, as well as culture. But I also grew up in a very cosmopolitan city, a very liberal culture within my family, as well, open to various Western cultural influences, which many Indians are, and education. So that has got a huge influence as to who I am in terms of identity. That Western influence in cosmopolitanism hasn't dried up, because I obviously moved to the UK to study, and also met my partner in the UK and settled here in Uttlesford, where I actually got married, and very much in the very council buildings that we are all assembled today. So this area is obviously also my home, where I've lived long enough to integrate my Indianness with British family values. So to right at the start, I want to say that, this kind of an exposure is going to obviously have an impact on who I am, how I think. To be rooted in a British family is very different to actually migrate here and settle. So that is one thing that you want to keep in mind, with all the things I would say. As the other thing also, studying in the UK and living among international students in London has also changed my stereotypical views of the world. And that again connects with my own identity questions as to how I perceive other people's identities. Having lived in one of the greatest, I would say, multilingual as well as multicultural city of London, that has continued to shape my core values of tolerance by incorporating world visions. And that is something that, SOAS, where I have studied as well as work, is the place to be, because there is a saying that, the world isn't so as you step outside, you also embrace the world. So, in those terms, we are also having interesting dialogues within our campus as to who we are, with changes in the whole curriculum systems, the decolonization debate that is kickstarted in SOAS. So those things are bigger questions, which cannot be summed up here really, where you're beginning to question the kind of expectations you come to study here with. Are those expectations met as a foreign student? And the kind of marginalizations some experience people will have is going to be very different from people who are coming from, say, Africa or other parts of the world. The Indian experience is going to be different. So these differences need to be built in. And those are the kind of things that I've actually encountered and faced and experienced when staying in halls. So many of my stereotypical impressions of, say, a homogeneous Muslim identity, for instance, is not something that I would have known sitting back in Calcutta, where perceptions of Hindu and Muslim is different, to when you're meeting with worlds in a world campus where Muslim identity itself is quite fractured, very different. And those kind of heterogeneity in experience is something that has certainly shaped my vision and my views. So in the end, I would say, my identity has got no fixed boundaries. And today, I really see myself as a global citizen without compromising my nationality as an Indian. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
I just love that so much. And I think one of the things that hopefully will come across today is the fact that actually, there's no homogenous experience. Our identity is really, really personal. So it's brilliant to kick off with that answer. And sorry for putting you on the spot as well. You didn't expect to go first. But I think, Sam, if it's okay, I'll come to you next. So just to repeat the question, how do you define yourself and what does your identity mean to you? Sanjukta, she shared around what has shaped her identity and how maybe where she lives or where she works has shaped her identity. So if you could touch on that, if you feel comfortable to, it'd be great to hear your thoughts.
Sure. Yes, my identity as well, I've experienced it in a really fluid way, a changeable way. So I've had that experience as well of going to different countries to live and study. So I studied in the Far East in Japan. And when I was there, I was a foreigner, and I was a foreigner along with everybody else. And I tended to have friends who were also foreigners, but all these foreign people were Americans, and they tended to be white, although there were other appearances as well. So my friends were white, they were black, they were from all the countries of the world, and we were all united in being foreign. So we had an identity there of being foreigners, and I was okay with that because I knew that I was a foreigner there. I was a guest, and I was treated really, really well. It was lovely to engage with a different culture. I learned a lot from that experience, and I felt really comfortable there because people were welcoming and they were nice. And on occasion there was racism as well. So sometimes my friends said that they had been refused entry to bars or restaurants, and people would cross their arms like that and say, "Damn it, that you can't come in here because you're a foreigner." It had never happened to me, but my friends had that experience. And these friends were white American people, and they were astounded that that could happen to them because it was just something they hadn't experienced. And I thought, oh my God, my goodness, that's just something that I can really relate to as a person who's experienced racism in my own country, as well as in Japan in different ways, but never that particular experience. And then I had a discussion with the same person who was complaining about that racism, and she told me, oh, racism in America, that's all just a thing, you know, it's just a myth. These Black people have got a chip on their shoulder. That's what she said to me after having this experience that she's shared about not being let into a restaurant. So I was kind of astounded that that person could not relate to the experience of other people, having been in that same sort of situation herself. And also it's a great opportunity to come here and talk to everyone about this, because communication and how we talk to each other is how we build relationships. So this sort of event is essential, and I'm glad that we can talk about this because that's the way to heal things. In a personal relationship, I would talk to people to try and heal as well if there was something wrong with close family members. So I do think that this is something that we do as a nation and as a community need to talk about, as well as with other countries too. So my identity too is fluid. So when I came back to Britain, I identify with being British because I am, and to some extent English because I am as well, and a Londoner. And I think as a child I had a really strange identity. I felt very rootless because I was born in London, and it felt very strange because I knew that I was different from age 5 because people told me that I was, and that was a really strange experience. So I do have, and I had a secular upbringing as well. So but I knew as I grew older that I had other bits of identity, and they weren't really my identity, they were family things. So my mother's identity was as a South African or as an African, and so I carry that with me too. And my grandparents and also my great-grandparents were indentured labourers that were taken from India to work in South Africa. And also I have Black people in my family and mixed race people in my family, and I have so Indian people as well, but that's a step further for me. So I've been to visit South Africa, I've never been to India, but I know that my grandparents were indentured labourers, which is currently defined as a form of modern slavery. It was in the aftermath of slavery that my grandparents and great-grandparents were indentured labourers for the British Empire. And as a result of being subjects of Britain, or subjugated, if you'd like to think about that word, that my mother and father were able to come to Britain because they were subjects. They were Windrush generation in the sense that as Commonwealth people, the so-called Commonwealth of Britain, that they were able to come to Britain. And they came on one of the ships, not from the Caribbean, but as the people of the empire, they came on a different ship, and they experienced everything that the Windrush generation would experience. They haven't experienced the common sort of conflict that's happened recently with the Windrush generation of being deported on the basis of not having papers, when Windrush people don't actually need papers. That's because both my parents are no longer alive. So I don't know if that would have happened to them. My mother was certainly naturalized, so it wouldn't have happened to her, I don't think. But I don't really know about my father. So I wonder what would happen if they were still around. So part of my identity is the identity of my parents and grandparents, but it's not my identity, but it's something that as my history I really need to sort of inquire into, because I feel that the sacrifices that my parents and grandparents made, and great-grandparents, they suffered a lot of losses as part of their experience, and it's only as a recent matter of looking at history that I've learned a little bit of what happened to them. I can only imagine. I don't have personal details of what happened to them, but I can imagine what happened, and I really feel that, because that's a part of my history, and it's also a part of Britain's history, that part of my identity, which is missing from a lot of what you hear in current affairs. So I think that's all I can say for now. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. Marta.
Yes, hi. So my origins are Polish. I was born and bred in Poland. However, at age of 19, I left Poland. I went, first I lived in Germany, then I studied in the Netherlands, I lived in Canada. So I've been, as of identity, I'm very Sanjukta and Sam in a way of, I'm a mixture of everything. I have Polish foundations, and those foundations are very, very important to me. Same with my religion, because being Polish, you're almost automatically being Catholic. It's like a part of my heritage. It's part of who I am. However, because I lived all over the place, I married a Dutchman. I'm now in a relationship with somebody who's half Australian, half Irish. So my children are half Polish, half Dutch. So my identity, I would say, is European with a flavor of Polish in it, in a way. So, and you know, I am a woman. I would like to say that my identity, or the way I define myself, is an independent citizen of a world who is there to welcome everybody else and be and educate about tolerance. Sanjukta mentioned about about her university time. I studied in Amsterdam. My best friends were a girl from East Germany, West Germany, American, and a Russian. So that was 1997. That was just after the war broke down. It was when people saw us and talked to us, they were like, how can you be friends? You should be enemies. You're Russian, you're Polish, you're German, you're American. How come that all of you stick together? And so that was the first ever experience of actually people looking at stereotypes, at labels for me. I came from a country where those labels didn't exist because diversity didn't exist in Poland then. So my way of bringing up my children is to be as open-minded to everybody else and everybody around us, and tolerant and understanding that there's not just one culture, there's not just one heritage, etc. Everybody is an individual, and as one of my girls said, there is no one else like you out there. And that's what it is. I think it's the same with Sanjukta, Sam, or anybody else who joined us today. Is we are all individuals, and our experiences make us and define us for who we are and what we represent.
Amazing. Thanks everybody for kicking this off so well. If anyone does want to share their thoughts or reflections, please use the chat and we hopefully have some time to come to you as well. I'm going to get us into the main question really for the event today, and it is about your experiences of living in Uttlesford. So I wanted to ask the speakers around what their first impression was. Everybody has moved here from somewhere else. They've not grown up here. What was your first impression? Has that changed? And what do you like and dislike about living here? So what I will do is I might stick to this order so that you can all be prepared. I'll come to you, Sanjukta, if that's okay. And then I will go back to Sam and then Marta again.
Yeah, I mean, I thought your second question would be more to do with how the identity is shaped by place. So I'm trying to conflate the two in terms of, what the first impression would be of, of Uttlesford. So, yeah, I mean, firstly, my identity is definitely shaped by place and place making, as I call it, because you also make the place in which you live, and you try and have your own input and create some kind of an environment in the place you live. And that's what the diaspora community has always done, that, you are thrown into a place, into an ambience, which is very alien, very different, but you try and connect and you try and create these networks. And, my experience of living here, therefore, connects directly to place, to as much as my identity about place, but also about place making, and whether I have been able to create that place for myself in Uttlesford is something that I would like to definitely mention. So living in the UK, as I mentioned before, has certainly impacted my worldviews, and particularly, how others see me in society and culture. So no matter, how Western my attire is, or however much I dye my hair or try to look blonde, my identity is always bound by ethnicity, color, and appearance. And this is the fundamental difference that one has to bear in mind when we've, living in London and actually having that access to places where you could easily wear colorful clothes. I mean, when I was coming here, I was briefed by the British Council where, you wear in London what you feel very comfortable. Now, when you come to Uttlesford and you kind of step into a zone which is, as you said, 95% white British, and you don't quite encounter a woman in a sari or a woman in a salwar kameez, then obviously, your first impression is, oh my God, I've really landed in this beautiful village. My first impression is of Saffron Walden was that this is really a pretty picture postcard town with colorful thatched cottages, green commons dominated by a church spire in the skyline. And because of my marriage and connection to a ready network of people and friends, I felt like I was kind of stepping in quite easily and settling very easily. Obviously, the quiet ambience is something that hit me as soon as I stepped in here. You don't get that kind of noise that you're used to. And I still remember going to the surgery and getting registered. And the doctor there was kind of, the first experience was, oh my God, you've moved from Calcutta, which is a bustling cosmopolitan city, to somewhere like Saffron Walden. I mean, how did you land here? So that curiosity was there. So I kind of, I was settling in this place without any hint of racism or discrimination or being a complete stranger, because I had that household to turn to and the kind of friends and people that welcomed me. So so having said that, I also found that I mean, it didn't bother me that that Saffron Walden really didn't have the kind of ethnic population that you would be surrounded by in some pockets of London. But there was also, there was an element of international students here. And that's also the time when the Bell Language School existed. Also the time when, I found that there are lots of civic organizations in Saffron Walden where I could easily sort of step in and participate in various events, whether it's the museum, the library, there's historical societies, there's also Quakers. So, I found that life was there. And a lot of people had told me about it, and that Saffron Walden is a very special place. Did you know it was also in the Guinness Book of World Records? for some reason, for the number of organizations it has. And that kind of struck me. Is it there? I never bothered to find out whether it's there in the Guinness Book of Records or not. But I did think that it was a place which had, a huge cultural civic organizations that something I really enjoyed right from the start. So in Uttlesford, the other thing that I noticed that, when you come from London or when you come from places where you're kind of used to seeing Bengali signs in shops, Bengali signs even in stations, say Southall, for instance, you don't find that. So, you don't actually see any of that, but there are lots of eateries, lots of places to eat. So my first visit to a local pub, for instance, at that time, the Railways was there. And that was my first, encounter in a local pub, where I still remember that a lot of people were coming to me and asking, you're a new Indian in town. And that was kind of a curious thing. Where are you from? Your background, your culture. So a lot of people were interested to know about me at that time. And I actually thought that, let me have my spice fill from the Nimantron, which is a restaurant in the town with a Bengali name. So I was drawn to that this has got the Bengali name, and it's kind of has boldly written. It's not like the spice, which was also there. So Nimantran again means an invitation. And so, those kind of things hit you first, that, what are the signs? Is there any kind of presence of language there? So there was no such sign that you could maybe perhaps find in Cambridge. I'm not quite sure. But the other thing about the place was that, lots of, there were some Pakistani, there were Bangladeshi shopkeepers and grocers. They kind of instantly made me feel like, as if I was part of them and I was a part of it. So that's also a time when I had to start thinking of changing my routine, my food habits, more importantly, my expectations, because you couldn't find your traditional vegetables and fish and fruits and those kind of things that you're used to finding in more ethnically rich places like in London, that you won't find that in Saffron Walden. You had the Waitrose, and it wouldn't really stock the kind of vegetables that you're used to. And many of my friends were living in the city. They were living in London suburbs and also in Cambridge. And they were kind of really used to, I was just reading something from the chat. So they were kind of used to very established networks. So even in Cambridge, for instance, I was part of first time setting up the Durga Puja festival, which never existed in Cambridge. We were the very first to start off with the support of the Indian organization that supported it. But you couldn't do something like that in Saffron Walden because there isn't that kind of network that exists. And I can tell you in 20 years' time, that hasn't changed much. There are lots of times when, I would try and engage with some of the local communities and community members. So even though they would stand as mayors, they would stand as councillors, the thought of actually creating a larger community network didn't quite happen and never happened really, in spite of lots of talks around it. So you couldn't actually create that kind of network that ethnic minorities do in other places. And I think that has got to do with the way the population is a lot dispersed in Uttlesford. It's a huge size where people live are kind of quite not connected. And also this kind of a lack of cohesion with a dispersed rural settlement is very important to keep in mind. So yeah, I mean, today, I would say
Oh no, have we? I think, I don't know if it's just me that's lost Sanjukta.
No, I think we all lost Sanjukta.
Oh no. Well, hopefully we'll get her back. I'll come to you, Sam, if that's okay. Because conscious of time, but some really amazing thoughts. And thank you for everyone who's inputting in the chat too. Oh, Sanjukta, you're back. If it's okay, I'll go to Sam unless I'll let you finish your point and we'll go to Sam because I just got her ready.
Did I get muted or did you not hear me in the middle?
We lost you.
We lost Wi-Fi.
Did you not hear me what I was saying then for all this time?
No, we heard.
No, we did. About 30 seconds ago, we lost you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I was just going to wrap up by saying some of the positive things that influenced me as well. You know, like I was talking about the nature walks and biodiversity, developing an interest in the local areas like Samford, which has got a very romantic place in my life. Getting involved with lots, getting interested with the kind of historical preservations that this place offers, like Thaxted and Stansted and Saffron Walden with all its antique collections and books and all that. But the real point here is that it did develop an interest to delve deeper into the more kind of Indo-British heritage that Samantha kind of hinted with being a Commonwealth citizen. And that is something that I would like to delve more, if possible, maybe on another session. But it tried to sort of encourage me to look more deeply into how local British people think of an Indian among them and what India means to them. And many of these ideas were much more than just stereotypes. They were definitely multicultural and kind of influenced by travel and all that. So I'll just stop there. Thanks.
Amazing. Thanks so much. And thank you everyone who's sharing your thoughts in the chat. It's been really, really good to get some reflections. I really encourage everybody to read the message in the chat. Everyone's experiences are so different. And there are some similarities coming out too. Sam, can I come to you?
Sure, thanks. So yes, rural areas are isolating, and I think for BAME people, for me as a person who is British but who is Black, or however, I find it confusing how to describe myself really, but for me it is actually an isolating experience as much as it is for anyone else, and possibly more so because there are barriers I find to me actually participating in life here. Possibly those barriers are because of other people's perception of me, because I am just an ordinary, normal person. I tend to think I'm quite nice and I want to help my community. So I think I'm there to kind of try and make an effort to belong, and that's really what I try to do. But it is like making that effort, and I have found that people are they tend to be nice. Like a lot of people are really welcoming, kind and friendly. So I've got lovely neighbours, I've got people that I know in the street to say hello to. I know people down the local pub, but that has been as a result of making a real effort to try to get out there and find people that I can communicate with and get to know, because I find it can be lonely here. And I think I'm a shy person naturally anyway, but so making good friendships is I find it's a little bit difficult sometimes, especially maybe as I get older, because I'm not in a day-to-day college scenario where making friends really came easily. But now I find it's a little bit more difficult just living here, and I don't have that ready-made network of friends. So I've tried to go out there and get to know people. So I do volunteer and I do all sorts of things, and I hang around sometimes at the local pub as well, because we like going to the local pub. And sometimes that's been a mixed experience. So I relate to what Sanjukta says when people come up to her and they're curious. And I had this experience where someone was coming up to me and saying quite determinedly that I was a foreigner, and kept saying it to me, and I found it really kind of hurtful. And I had to, it was a bit weird, so I had to explain myself about, no, I'm not actually, I'm not a foreigner, I'm actually British, I'm a Londoner, and I'm blah blah blah. But I was put on the spot by having to give this kind of potted history of myself and how I belong to this stranger in a pub. And then I thought, well, actually, I just want to go and sit down somewhere and be quiet now. So then I went in a corner and had to finish my half pint of cider and felt a little bit uncomfortable. But probably I don't need to be uncomfortable about that sort of thing. But I did feel a little bit uncomfortable, unfortunately, because it didn't strike me as that nice. I wasn't listened to for a start. Just repeatedly telling me that I'm a foreigner wasn't very nice as an experience. And not being listened to wasn't nice either. So I couldn't really win in that situation. It was like I explain myself, but you still don't hear me. I'm actually, I belong here. And wasn't received. And I've had mixed experiences as well as participating in my community. So I find that I might have great ideas about how this thing is a good idea, and some people might join in, and then someone will say, oh no, we don't want your idea is no good. And so my idea never gets off the ground because, you know, someone says it's like not good. So basically I find it's a really mixed up experience. Sometimes I'm welcome and some people don't really welcome my ideas. And I don't want to be too negative though. I mean, most of the time everything is fine, but sometimes things are difficult, and I get sometimes criticized for things that I've done, even if they're, you know, really well intentioned. So I don't really want to delve in too deeply with those experiences, but you know, it's a bit like if I send the email at 5 in the morning, is someone going to really complain at me? Like, as some people have experienced in the news recently. So, you know, you can do the most innocent thing and people will just jump on you for doing something that's just a little bit not what they wanted things, how they wanted it done. So I think it's really hard sometimes to feel like you belong, or feel that there's people who treat you like you ought to be here and that you're okay to contribute. And sometimes I think that maybe there is some kind of bias as well with some people. So there are all sorts of reasons for bias, but there's this implicit bias test that you can do online. And I think it's at LSE. There's an LSE website, and you can test yourself for all sorts of things. And it's about the human brain just being biased about anything. You can be biased about weight issues, about gender, about race, about all sorts of things, and you can test yourself on there. So I found it quite handy to go on there and have a look and see what was going on in my head as well, because I think we're all kind of human, and we've all got these things in our head about how we've been brought up, what we've been told by other people, and how they filter into our consciousness and how we behave as a result of that. So I think it's really useful to actually think about things like that and recognize my own perhaps conceptions or ideas about things, and challenge myself as well to approach people with an open mind and a good heart, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks so much. And yeah, again, some great feedback and comments in the chat. I think some of the themes that I'm picking up is that, you know, racism and, you know, negative experiences are still you know, historic, but still prevalent as well. And the loneliness of being, you know, different or not being able to form communities is something that's coming up from what you're all saying, and also in the chat too. We're gonna ask a question in a minute around, you know, what can the community do? What can individuals do? Some of you have touched on some great things that you're getting involved in, but we want to know as well what the council can do to support. But Marta, what about you? What was your first impression, and what do you like and dislike about living here?
So I came to Uttlesford from South London, and I live in Littlebury. So if you know Central Warden and Littlebury, Littlebury it's a bubble of its own. It's the quintessence of village life, close to all the amenities, and it's a very bustling little village. Very welcoming. The moment we moved here, within a day, I had invited for the children to go to Christmas party organized in the village. Next door neighbors' Christmas party, the newcomers' supper. You know, so literally within a month of arriving in a village, not knowing anyone, we were part of the community, and that was so wonderful. And we still are. This village, this place has taken me for the last 14 years through some of the hardest things that a person can go through. You know, this village helped me survive a divorce, loss of a parent, loads of things. And you know, without my neighbors who are so supportive, absolutely amazing people, I wouldn't be the person I am. So my first impressions of Uttlesford when I came here were, wow, I am so privileged to be able to move here. Yes, and as Sanjukta said, there's some, you know, we are living in a beautiful place, and And it was all fairy tale up until the moment when in 2013 I started working for Citizen Advice Bureau, volunteering at the time. Now I work, part of staff. My boss is listening, so I need to be nice as well. And my eyes got opened to the hidden poverty we actually do have around here, to the barriers that people face when they want to do something, where their ambitions are being crumbled because of outside barriers that people put on them, discrimination in employment, in housing, and opened my eyes to actually we do have a lot of minorities around here. We have a big population of Polish people, Eastern Europeans in Saffron Walden, in Dalmo, well, whole of Uttlesford, really. We also have a history here because, you know, I'm a recent migrant to UK. I'm somebody who arrived here after Poland became European Union member. So with the influx of the Poles, but if you know Bruijn, there is a Polish through the Second World War. The Polish unit of spies was trained at Bruijn, just around the corner. I can see Alan nodding as well. So there is that part of here that actually people will say, "Oh, my granddad was Polish," or you know. So I feel very welcome here, and I still feel very welcome here. In recent year, I've toyed with an idea of going back to Poland, and we were packing our bags and we were going. The whole Brexit thing kind of added to the feeling that yeah, it's time to go. But then the situation changed, COVID hit, etc., whatever, and I changed my mind and I stayed. And every single person I say, "Oh, by the way, I'm not moving back to Poland," they're all like, "Yes, great. You know, we don't want to lose you." And it's like, "Oh my God, you know, I love this place. I honestly love living here." Has my opinion of around here changed? As you know, Brexit has been hard for Europeans like me. You know, I did came across people who would say, "So when are you going home?" Or, you know, "I don't want, you know, it's not, I'm voting Brexit because I don't want all those immigrants here." Like, okay, but I'm one of them. I don't mean you, I like you. It's like, don't take it personally, but we do take it personally. So I guess there is that tint of disappointment, but it's only a tint of disappointment. But I don't think there would be a better place for me than it is here in Uttlesford. I absolutely love it here and loved it here ever since we first came. So that's my first impressions.
Love it so much. Thank you so much, Marta. And I think it's really interesting that you touched on your experiences post-Brexit. Obviously, that has had a huge impact on a lot of people from minority ethnic communities. And it's great to hear some of the, you know, positive stories around how people have built communities. Looking at the comments in the chat, some, you know, suggestions and needs for us to do a bit more in this space. So for the council to commit to celebrating Black History Month. And also, obviously, last year there was a huge awakening around race. With Black Lives Matter, a lot of people wanted, you know, more support, which is completely understandable. You know, hopefully this is just the beginning of a conversation where we can actually think about some strategic things that can be done to support people on the issue of race and racism. Some good stories around what's happening in schools. Also the market, a great idea from a multicultural marketplace. I think the key thing here is to, you know, create spaces for dialogue, for learning from communities. I'm going to actually come back to our last question, because I want to just get us back a little bit back on time. We've got a couple of presenters, and then we'll what I'll do is we can hear from the presenters and then have some time to hear from as many people as possible. Again, continue to use the chat, and we'll hear from our speakers around their ideas around what we need to take forward, what we want from the community and what we want from the council and individuals as well. So if it's all right, Kaylee and Julie, I'm going to get you ready to do your presentations. I think, if possible, it would be great to start with you, Julie. Hopefully we'll get the tech okay. So Julie's joining us. She's a community manager at Victim Support, which is a charity that provides free and confidential supports to victims and witnesses of crime. She's got a presentation to share with us today. One of the outcomes we wanted to get from today's session is to let people know that support is actually available. So it'd be great to hear from Julie around and what work that you're doing and what the community can access through you. So Julie, are you able to share your screen and share your presentation? I know you've got a bit of a presentation for us.
See what happens. I'm doing share screen.
Fingers crossed it will all work, but keep the comments coming in the chat. It's really good to hear from some of you. I think, Becca, your point is really important. This is why we really need to celebrate diversity. We all lose out if we don't, have that richness of diversity. It's not just about people who might come from minority ethnic backgrounds. It's something that we can all benefit from, which I think is good to see so many people come today and recognise that. How are we getting on, Julie?
Oh, can you not see anything yet?
Not yet.
Why is that then? Oh, here it is. It might be this one. Can you see that?
Something is loaded. Yeah, perfect.
Is that it? Great. Right. Well, thank you for having me, everybody. I'm really fascinated by the conversations here. I think this is a fantastic thing to be doing. And I'm so pleased that I've been invited to be part of it. I'll try not to take too long doing this, because I think that we are sort of quite short of time. It's very precious here today. Victim support. So we are the leading independent charity in England and Wales, supporting victims of crime. Crime can be anything really, from sometimes it's like a neighbour dispute, people falling out with their neighbours. It can just be the harassment, it can be criminal damage, and it can be far more crime types such as robbery, burglary, assaults. So there's a huge range of what can come under crime. Obviously, hate crime is a specific personal targeted sort of crime against a person's individual characteristics. We are very, very aware of that at Victim Support. And again, any crime type can come under the hate crime heading. So it might be that you've had a falling out with your neighbour, and because of who you are, your characteristics, it could be race, religion, disability, sexual orientation. It doesn't matter what it is. If you feel that the harassment, the abuse, whatever's going on is targeted at you because of your individual characteristics, then we want to help, we want to support you. And it doesn't matter what the crime is. It doesn't matter whether it's been reported to the police either. We're there regardless of any of those things to help and support and provide and the options and discussions with you that we can. So our main aim is to help and empower anyone affected by crime or a traumatic incident. A traumatic incident is like the Manchester bombings or something like that, where a lot of people might be injured or witnesses to a crime, and even a witness can need support to recover from what they've seen. Our support is free, it's confidential, and we class it as emotional and practical. I'll describe a little bit more about what they are a bit further on. We are independent of the police and all local authorities. And as I say, anyone affected by a crime or a traumatic incident can contact us. It doesn't matter how long ago the crime happened either. So it might be something that you've perhaps brushed off, and then something comes up on a TV program or something like that. And it brings home to you how that actually, yeah, that did affect me quite badly, and I didn't deal with it at the time. And it would be good just to have someone to talk to about it now. You don't have to have been to the police either. So we're open sort of and available for anyone at any time. The impact of crime, so people can be angry, upset, experience other very strong emotions. They can feel guilt, can make them feel isolated. They can have trouble sleeping and can affect their eating. They can turn to sometimes drink and drugs to help them cope with how they're feeling. They might blame themselves, and it can also lead to longer term problems such as depression or anxiety. And it doesn't affect anybody in the same way. Everyone is affected in different ways. So 10 people could be a victim of the same crime, and they would all have different emotions, different reactions, and different ways of coping. So we take that into account as well. Our needs assessments are very individual to a person. We talk to them, we get to know what's going on for them and how we can help them. As I say, who can refer to us? Well, the police can refer with consent from the victim, and most of our referrals do come through when a crime is first reported, like they come through automatically on a data transfer. But agencies can call in. Again, we do have to have consent from the victim. And as I said before, self-referral, so anyone can self-refer them to us. We do support from 4 upwards. We have no upper age limit because I've jumped too far ahead there, I think. I have got contact details on this slide. I don't know whether or not you want me to put them in the chat or whether this will be, you can take it from here later. Hayley, perhaps you could let me know that. Our method of contact. So once we receive a request that somebody would like support, we try 3 times to make contact with that person. We do this over different times and days in order to maximise the likelihood of being able to contact that person. If we can't contact them, then we will either send a letter or leave a text message just to let them know that we are there. We have tried to contact, and if they want the support, they'll feel free to contact us, and we'll take up the support again. Obviously, when a crime first happens, people might not think they need to talk to anyone. They might have so much going on in trying just to deal with that initial incident that they don't stop to think about it. And then a week or so down the line, they might think, I remember that phone call, that message that was left. Actually, it would help me. And just call in and one of our team will be there to have a chat with you and set that up in place. So how do we work? We have a team of caseworkers, and they will be the ones that make the initial call or take the initial call, depending on whether it's outgoing or incoming. We do risk assessments. They will do a needs assessment with the person to find out what they actually want the support with. Sometimes that case will stay with a caseworker, and sometimes it goes across to be supported by one of our trained volunteers. Our support can be done over the telephone, but not at the moment, but out of COVID times, we would be able to arrange face-to-face support as well if that's what a client would prefer. It's quite often in a coffee shop or sort of a public venue, just because of risk assessments going to homes, etc. It's a lot more involved if we were going to do that. So the type of support we provide is the practical or the emotional. The emotional support is mainly just giving that person someone to listen to talk to confide in, to really be able to tell somebody else, not connected with them or the family or anything around them, exactly how they have been affected by what's been going on. We can talk to them through reporting options if they're not sure whether or not they want to report it to the police or how to report it to the police. We can help them manage expectations of the police or other support services. We can signpost them to other support services if that's something that's appropriate. And we have little tools. We have beyond crime workbooks to cope with stress or not sleeping or anger management, or other sort of emotions like that. The practical support well, I've said already, I suppose, the signposting, onward referral, sometimes if it's a domestic abuse or sexual abuse crime that comes to light. We can talk about the criminal justice system and how that works and how that might affect them. And also we can provide basic sort of personal alarms and door and window alarms if that will help to make somebody feel safer at that time. I've got a little case study here. I will try and go through that quite quickly for you. So let's say we've got a client, Matilda, 27, racially abused and harassed by her partner's ex-partner. So the ex-partner has sent Matilda written harassment by an instant messaging. Matilda was affected by the language used, and she was struggling to support really herself and her partner around the impact of the harassment. She wanted to sought support to help her cope with the impact of the racially aggravated harassment. So after our first conversation with Matilda to talk about her current situation and the needs that she has, the team began to provide her with emotional and practical support. Ongoing conversations established that Matilda wanted to find accommodation with her partner because they had previously were living separately. So she wanted support around her housing situation. She was also struggling with her finances because she was looking for work. We signposted her to Peabody, a specialist housing agency, and also to Citizens Advice Bureau for advice around her finances. Now, over the course of the support, victim support provided Matilda with personal alarm and door alarm. The outcomes of the support was Matilda gained confidence and self-esteem. She felt confident enough to enter employment. She felt safer when she went to stay with her partner because of the door and personal alarm. She felt reassured by having someone to talk to, and she was able to access a specialist support and advice around her housing situation. And Matilda's little testimony just said, through your support, I've been able to move on when I didn't think that I could. I can't explain how much I appreciate it. So that's just sort of very simple ways that we can listen, we can understand what the needs are, and we can look to how we can help with those needs. And working with other agencies like CAB, Peabody and things like that are fantastic for us because we know what's out there and we can help and advise and signpost clients to the best support that they can find if we aren't the ones to be providing it. As I said, we support children from 4 years up. We have a specialist children and young people caseworkers. They provide the similar support that we provide for adults, so the confidential support, low level and short-term interventions, again, face-to-face sessions often taking place in school, holistic multi-agency approach, and they provide activity-based support, which we don't provide for adults. We also have a specialist hate crime champion working within a victim support office. So that's very helpful for us if we need any advice or more information about what's going on or where we can find help and support for people maybe affected by hate crime. It's good to have that person in the office with us and all her knowledge that she can bring to us. And also to clients, because they can speak to her too and ask any questions or talk about any concerns that they have, and she can look to where it might be able to be addressed on their behalf. Now, volunteering with us, we're always looking for volunteers, and we have a poster which is included in this as well. Again, if you want me to put the information in the chat, I can, or if it's going to be put out on the presentation, then that's fine. Again, contacting us here. Now, for anyone who doesn't speak English as a first language, who might have difficulty making that first call or having the support through us, we use a language line, so we can easily set up a conversation with someone in any language that is required. It doesn't take very much at all. So just a simple little, if we can get a text or something just to say, yes, would like support, then we can look into how we address what language we provide that support in. I think that's really me. I hope I wasn't too long. Has anybody got any, well, if you've got any questions, perhaps pop them in the chat.
Julie, that was really, really great to hear how you can support. Thank you so much for sharing your presentation. If anyone has got any questions, you can either hold your thoughts until at the end of the next presentation, or feel free to pop them in the chat for Julie. And it would be great, Julie, if you could share the contact information or any other key information in the chat.
Okay.
What we'll do is we will, we'll be able to record some of the things that have been shared in the chat with you, and use this to start further conversations on this topic. So thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Hayley, it would be good to hear from you next.
Okay, I'm going to try sharing my screen. I'll try and be quick with my presentation, but do hurry me up, Hayley, if I'm...
That's okay. I'll give you a proper intro. So Hayley Boyle's joining us. She manages the Snapping a Stiletto project, which is campaigning for equality. And she's got a background in museum and art engagement, as well as creative collaborative programming. So we're going to hear a bit more about her project and how you can get involved. One of the things we wanted to achieve today is to provide more opportunities to access organisations who are doing work to support this theme. And also, as with victim support, providing you with some key information around what is actually happening, whether you want to volunteer to get involved or share any other projects that you're working on as well, which might be of interest to all the attendees. So it'll be good to hear from you, Hayley. Hopefully we can all see your slides. Looking great so far.
Okay, good. So I'm working on Snapping the Stiletto, campaigning for equality. It's a lottery-funded project run in association with Essex County Council until March 2022. This is the second phase of the project. The first phase focused on celebrating the centenary of women getting the vote and suffrage. The stories that came out of that project were absolutely brilliant and culminated in a really good exhibition. They were largely of middle class and aristocratic white women. So a second bid was put in for this round of the project, which is where I come in. Our aim is to find and celebrate stories of underrepresented women in Essex. Our target groups are women across all ethnicities, LGBTQ+ individuals, working class women, and women with additional needs and disabilities. The key areas we're working in are Basildon, Tendring and Colchester, but also the areas around the 3 museums that we've partnered with, one of which is Saffron Walden Museum. All of the museums are very committed to building long-term relationships with the communities involved in the STS project. So although we round up in March next year, the museum's goal is to continue these relationships and continue working with these groups for a long time. During the project, we are not only engaging with the history of women in the county, but with more contemporary themes, issues around the Essex girl stereotype and other identities that people are living with in Essex. We've changed the approach of how we're working on this project. The original project went to the partner museums collections first and tried to find stories from within those collections. We're doing it the other way around. We're approaching communities first and building relationships with them and finding out what kind of projects they want to get involved in. It's really important that the people that we're working with, whether it's groups or individuals, have a say in what they're doing. And I'm not going to be there as a museum person taking over curating at the end or editing anyone's voices. We really want people to take ownership over these projects and speak for themselves. And I view myself and the other person working on the project more as facilitators to do the kind of admin behind the scenes, and it's the groups that we work with that are taking the lead on our projects. The outputs for our project, it can be very different, although it's great. We really want to have a lot of museum exhibitions. We are not pushing that with our groups. The things that people are getting involved with right now, obviously a lot of online workshops, but we're doing a lot of training. We're training people in oral history collections so they can interview each other and their friends, so it's not strangers coming in to interview them. We're also encouraging people to interview each other in their own languages as well. We're doing a lot of pop-up events. We're working on some tours and trails. We're getting involved in arts projects, and it looks like we might actually have a book coming out towards the end of the project as well. So I've just given I'll just run through these super quickly. This is just an example of some of the projects we're doing. It's not extensive. We are doing a lot of others as well. We're working with 11 women from the Colchester Chinese Cultural Society. They were brought together by the person who set up the society. We had a lot of discussions about what kind of project they wanted to get involved in. And they decided that they would like to display their traditional Chinese costumes. They're all from different ethnic minorities within China. And we have been speaking to them and kind of talking to them about their experience of their life in China and their journey to Essex and their life in Essex. They also, as part of the project, wanted to get young people involved because there's a serious issue within the Chinese community in Essex of the younger generations having no interest in learning Mandarin and kind of wanting to distance themselves from Chinese culture as well and just take on British culture. So what we're doing is, at the suggestion of the group, we are getting a Chinese artist in to run manga workshops where they'll be storyboarding their experiences of being Chinese in Essex and using the exhibition as inspiration for that. We're working with the South Essex African Caribbean Association and the BOAS project, although I would really like a third organisation in on this if anyone's interested, on a project around Afro hair. So that's the history of the attitudes towards it, experience of people who have it, and also we may be campaigning for a few changes specifically in schools in Essex as well. We're doing this by collecting some oral histories. We're going to have some pop-up events in festivals around Essex where we're working in collaboration with local hair shops, and we'll be encouraging women to come and share their stories and experiences as well. Arts are what I won't go into because we've just finalised the 6th school and we only have 6 spots today to offer, but we're working on with Southend Museum and their costume department on ideas around identity and self-presentation through fashion. We're working with the Girl Guides on some animation workshops, and I'll show you what they're animating in a bit. We're working with the Essex Girls Liberation Front, the author Sid Moore, on some tours about the Essex witch trials and how they relate to contemporary issues around the Essex girl stereotype. We're working on a pretty exciting project with Outhouse East. They have a massive collection of stuff that I was completely unaware of until about 2 weeks ago. They've been collecting items since they opened as the Essex Gay Switchboard in, I think, the late 70s. So we're going to be digitising those archives. And we're working with the Essex Multicultural Activities Network and the artist Laura Aziz from Weird Flora on a project where it's largely based around getting people outside and socialising after lockdown, but more so about working with a group of women who are fairly isolated. Because of Laura's background, she's Egyptian. We're working largely with women whose first language is Arabic, but we're welcoming other women as well to kind of get out and take ownership of walkways across Essex and of the land, and they're going to be foraging for different things, and these sessions are going to culminate in some cooking and sharing of recipes and experiences. Within our projects, we really want to highlight that even if people come as a group or are part of the same organisation, that their experiences are different, and we want to celebrate that. So our projects are about kind of taking up space and recognising that preserving individual experiences is important. And a lot of the women that I've had conversations with through these projects and the other ones we're working with initially are kind of don't understand, and they're saying, well, I'm not interested, you know, why would you want to preserve my stories? And if they're the women that are saying that, it makes me want to preserve their stories more, because they're the ones that are going to be forgotten or not recorded. And I think that, you know, if any of you can help me reach out to those kind of women, please do. We did a call out for people of Essex to nominate inspirational women. We got about 150 nominations, and out of them we chose 6 women to become our project ambassadors. So we are working on projects with each of these women, but they're also kind of, they've become officially, as of yesterday, because we revealed their identities on International Women's Day, the face and voice of our project. I don't think it's right that it's me that's always on the news and on the radio and speaking for the project. And although I'm doing it here, they will hopefully, if we come to any more things like this, one of them will be doing this. They're hugely different, and they're not all involved in arts and history. With Simone, I've explained her project. Adonai is a coder, and she's really dedicated to sharing her knowledge. She's 14. She's amazing. We're working on a project with her and ETV in Chelmsford. Hefsi is, although she's a trained biochemist and has a PhD in dermatology, she now focuses on her science communication, and she set up Basildon Street Science and other outreach projects where she focuses on underrepresented children and their parents to teach them more about science and how to get into that industry. Lisa is an activist, a practicing artist, and she lectures at Nottingham Trent. She has created an online community through her Instagram account where she shares her stories about living with addiction and talking about people who've been through the prison system, and encourages people to share their stories as well. We're probably going to be working with her on a project around sharing stories through objects anonymously. Peppy does, well, absolutely everything. She runs a charity cafe. She helps get young people with additional needs in employment through training and volunteering, things like that. I think we're going to be doing something really creative with her. But she's looking for partner groups. So if you have anyone that would be interested, please let me know. And Nina is she's a mentor and an accessibility consultant. She as well has built up a huge following on Instagram. You should check it out, where she talks to other disabled people about issues around ableism and accessibility and things like that. We had all their, a really talented illustrator called Marcy Mintrose illustrated their portraits for us. We're releasing one each day this week. So you're getting a bit of a preview here. I'll just show you them. So they all look beautiful here. I'm very happy with it. Finally, the reason I'm here today is because we're looking for partner organisations to work with. I'm full-time on the project, and our learning officer, Luella, is 2 days a week. So we are really in need of staff support and things like that. If you would like to join us as an organisation and you have skills or experience that we could work with, we're working with Refugee Action, and they're supplying translators for us. We're working with another group, and they're helping us with art therapy and things like that. So we are aware that we can't do everything. From groups and individuals, we're looking for participants. So whether that's getting involved as a volunteer or getting involved in one of our projects actively and coming along to workshops and the sessions that we're holding. And from everyone, we'd really just like ideas and general involvement. Like I said, I try not to go to these groups with an idea in mind of what I'd like out of it. I really want them to lead on everything that we're doing. So we're really looking for people who do have an idea and that we can help deliver. So that's it from me. I can share our contact details on our website, so that's okay.
Amazing, Hayley. Thanks so much. If you can share how people can get involved, I think some of the conversations we're having in the chat earlier are, relevant to the sort of projects that you want to support. So yeah, if you could pop your details and how to get involved in the chat, that would be amazing. For the rest of the event, what we wanted to do is come to some of you. I know we've been interacting with you in the chat, but keen to hear any comments relating to what we've heard today. We really want to focus on, what next? What do you actually want from your community, from your council, from your fellow neighbours, I guess. What I think would be the best thing to do is if I just come to our speakers and get their final comments, and we are actually able to stay on a bit longer for those of you who do want to share your thoughts and chip in. Conscious that some of you will need to shoot off at 5:30, but we are going to keep the conversation going. If I could just get each speaker to just quickly say one thing that, one final comment or one thing that they really want people to hear on the call. Thank you for taking part and for sharing so much with us, but it'd be good to hear, one final comment, and I'll start with Sam, because I know you wanted to add something earlier.
Oh, yes, thanks. So people perceive that racism happens mainly in the US, and they don't look at it as if it happens in Britain. So I want us to recognise that it does happen here. So my personal experience is that I have had racial discrimination happen to me, and it was in employment scenarios. So it's being excluded from having a job, and it's also being discriminated at and harassed at work. That's happened to me on a race basis as well. Not in Uttlesford, but in London and in Scotland. So those things impact people, and we won't hear about them, but they will affect people economically, and they also take a toll on society economically, because you lose that valuable contribution and those skills and that talent of your employees when you treat them badly. So I think we need to recognise that it happens, and actually just that it doesn't just happen in America. Also, slavery had an effect on Britain as well, because Britain was a slave trading nation. The British Royal Africa Company went to Africa and took people from there, went to the Caribbean, dropped the people off, got the sugar and came back. Also took people to be slaves in America to grow cotton. The cotton came back to the British mills, and cotton was made in Britain. So a lot of the wealth that was created from the sugar industry and from the cotton industry built Britain during the Industrial Revolution and helped to make Britain the successful and lovely country that it is today. The wonderful country that we live in, which could be so much better if we recognised the past and grew from it, because that happened to people. And when the reparations were made to the slave owners, money was given, millions and millions of pounds was given to the slave owners, but nothing went to compensate those people who were slaves. And likewise, not just Africa, but also in India, like my grandparents were indentured labourers, they were used by people as virtual slaves. So that happened, and I think it has to be recognised that that happened, and we need to embrace that history and deal with it in a compassionate and nice way. That was the history of the empire. That was how things were done, and people still pay the price for that. We pay for the price of that by having this dissonance, this cognitive dissonance in our history, which we can't fully recognise. Britain won't recognise it, and we have to search for our histories in order to find them, and to make that peace with ourselves about what happened to our families and what happened to us. And that's a really important thing for me. I wish that that would happen. I think UDC can do lots to help. So I wanted, are we going to have the session about presenting our ideas? Because I've got loads of ideas of what we could do to actually make things better. It might be a difficult thing, but there are lots of things that can be done. And I'd like to give those ideas some airtime as well, if there's that time. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. It'd be great to, if you want to pop your messages in the chat. I'm just conscious I want to hear from a few more people. But, we knew that it was going to be tight with timing. We knew this is the start of the conversation. So really keen to hear from the other speakers around, any final comments or anything that you want to put forward. Marta, I'll come to you next. And as I said in the chat, if anyone has got anything they want to add or want to raise their hand, raise it now. Hopefully we'll be able to get to a few of you. Marta, what are your final comments?
Well, my final comment is actually just going back to Sam. I understand the history, all of that. It's our children don't learn our history in schools, and I think that's a big thing that I would like to drive with, is let our children learn the history, where they come from, the whole history of not just the Henry VIII and bits and pieces, but the whole history of the world they live in. If you have been through the UK through the English school curriculum, the history is very picky on what the children learn, even if they go through GCSEs or A levels. So I would say, if we could take something out, is to educate our children, and with our children we will grow the better future for us.
Yeah, amazing, Marta. Thanks for sharing that. I think education has come a few times in the chat, and there has been some examples of what is happening in schools. So if anyone wants to add to that or give any advice, I know we had some from school here as well, so it'd be great to hear your thoughts on that. Sanjukta, any final comments?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I was just picking up lots of points as the other presentations were going ahead. The whole idea of the victim support, it came to my mind that, the next big pandemic we are talking of is the mental health of BAME communities. And we've seen the importance of bereavement, for instance, in this scenario, which is not just about victim of a crime, but it's also about loss. And so there needs to be a lot more in terms of multi-faith dialogues. And I do know that there were conversations in Uttlesford before about having a local place of worship or even a local place of contemplation. I mean, you don't want to be driving miles to just reach a church. So similarly, local people here are actually having to drive to reach a simple place of worship. So, it's not just about religion. Today, multi-faith dialogue is also a part of a cultural dialogue, and I think that needs to be recognized. We've talked at length about schools, educations, and individual projects, but I still feel that this tokenism around festivals like Diwali or the one of Black History Month is not really where the conversation should be, because it remains kind of very disjointed approach to education. I think there should be much more open and more general discussions. Like, say, for instance, Samantha's mentioned about slavery, you can really have a much more kind of open discussions about that within schools, within colleges, and to really focus on extracurricular activities where you could have more regularities involved rather than the Black History Month. Having said that, I want to really focus on employment opportunities, and there are key heritage buildings here, like the Rhodes, for instance, is just around the corner. There's council offices, libraries, museums, Audley End House, and there needs to be a lot more local BAME involvement in these kind of activities and events and outreach as well, which we are not seeing. Say, for instance, you have Second World War reenactments often in schools or in public as a public event, but are you actually hearing the BAME contributions to the Second World War? I mean, that's not happening quite easily unless someone's actually putting these questions through. So I think in terms of employment, I still feel that the traditional scene is expectedly in the restaurant sector, caring, NHS plays a huge catchment, Asian businesses that are quite independent, and groceries and restaurants. I mean, this is the more kind of traditional catchment, but where is the BAME involvement in other key sectors where the investment needs to come in, whether it's publications, media, cultural industries, those kind of investments are required, and a lot more needs to be there where, BAME employment can be fitted in. And I do think that media locally can play a big role, whether it's community radios, a slot in community radios that are existing, through newspapers. You can really improve the quality of life through more views and coverage, which is absolutely missing. So, I can go on with lots of other ideas and things that we can talk of, but I think I'll leave it at that. But I think the solution has to be not like, I think there was something going on in chat, which I figured out, and I do know Sue. I was part of the multicultural event that took place in Uttlesford. I forgot the year, 2008, as someone mentioned. And I kind of still think that, a one-off event like that is still not the kind of solution that needs to happen. I think you really need to get to more permanent ideas here, and how we can work on networks and better investments in the area, which will bring on the participation more holistically. So I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Really, really amazing. I know we've not got any hands raised so far, but I think one of the things that I'm hearing a lot of is there is this point around education, but also awareness and the need to build communities. And this is why it's such a shame that we're not all face to face today, because we've had some, great comments, hopefully connections being made with people. It's a lot easier when we can just exchange details, isn't it? So feel free to connect with people over chat that you are relating to and you're enjoying their comments. Oh, good, we've got our first hand. Joanne, I think it's you. I'll come to you, and then I'll come to you, Ayub.
Hi, Hayley. So apologies. My name is Sergeant Simon Mear, and I work on the Positive Action team for Essex Police.
Amazing.
I'm currently on my wife's iPad, and the camera doesn't work, so apologies for that. Hayley, it's been absolutely lovely listening to everybody today, and your guest speakers have been absolutely fantastic, really informative, and I've learned a lot as well, being on this call. Would I be able to just talk about the Positive Action team slightly?
Please, this is such a great space and opportunity for you to do that. So yeah, please. And if you've got
thank you kindly.
Got any asks for people on the call, even better.
Thank you, Hayley. So Essex Police, I'm sure a lot of you have seen our recent campaign, We Value Difference campaign. And positive action, diversity, equality and inclusion is a massive topic for us at the moment, especially what's happened in the media over the last year or so too. So as an organisation, they're taking it so seriously. So the modern police service serves all communities, and as such, as a bare minimum, should adequately represent the members of the communities it serves. So the Positive Action team, the team I'm on, it's a very small team. I've got one chief inspector and 2 sergeants, but we look at retention, progression, attractiveness and recruitment. Priorities for us are to increase recruits from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds, ensure the workforce is reflective of the communities it serves. And I think that's where it really links in, Hayley, with everything that everyone's saying today. To support officers and staff internally as well, to attract diverse applicants of all ranks and grades and create equality of opportunity. Now, our main focus is on BAME, but it crosses over very nicely with LGBTQ+ and females too, and the support networks that are available. The key sort of work for us at the minute is the attractiveness and recruitment element. So we're doing a lot of the outreach work, if that makes sense. So it means linking in with the community policing teams, the community safety engagement officers and positive action spots. We're looking at identifying community groups. So through the independent advisory groups, we're going through, we're attending as many of those as possible, not just to talk about recruitment into policing, but to assist the community policing teams with breaking down those barriers, listening, being understanding, showing that empathy towards people that have been victims of hate crime, for example. And then we might move on to talking about recruitment into policing and the qualifications, skill sets you need. We're also going into the schools, colleges and universities. So Essex Police has, through the secondary schools and the community policing teams, Operation Enlightenment. So when the CPT officers go in and talk about Operation Sceptre, knife crime, hate crime, we can then jump on the back of that and talk about recruitment into policing too. We're supporting commands within Essex Police. For example, firearms, which come under the OPC, they don't have much diversity within firearms at all. And there's other sections of policing where the representation isn't very good. And we need to improve on that. We need to make sure we're getting that diversity within. So what we're looking at doing as well, internally and externally, is through our recruitment events, is having people that are from diverse backgrounds, almost guest speaking, much like yourselves today, and just drawing on their experiences and challenges that they've faced, and to say, you know, the help and support is out there through the different networks. So I was ex-firearms myself, and it is very much all white facing. There's not a lot of diversity when you go up the ranks. So to look to somebody towards, to have as a role model, it just isn't really there. So we just need to make sure we're reaching out to all these different groups. Through the colleges and universities, it's slightly different because we don't have Operation Enlightenment, but we're trying to make it as interactive and as fun as possible, especially due to COVID. We're doing a lot of Microsoft Teams, but we're linking in with the universities and colleges and having case studies, scenarios, videos to show them. There's even CSI forensic opportunities too. So through their courses, their public services courses, we're linking in with those teachers and lecturers and really making it fun for them, and then going on to explain what qualifications and skill sets you need for Essex Police. We're also linking in with the youth services, the CSPs, the local councils, our cadets. You know, we're trying to plan for the future as well. So we're going into the secondary schools at quite a young age and talking about policing and the challenges that sort of faces. I think the key things for us once the restrictions lift is to get out and see people face to face, like you just said, Hayley. So I think much like Drinks with Community Links or Coffee with Cops, we've come up with the idea of career cafes. So it'd be much like the same sort of thing, getting out, gazebo up, myself from the Positive Action team, perhaps with somebody from corporate recruitment and maybe someone from the community policing team too. And just stopping and speaking to people in the street and just having that positive engagement with them, I think is key. Like I already said, the cadets, 13 to 18-year-olds. So again, much like the schools, colleges and universities, we can have those conversations with them, and sending letters home to parents too, because, you know, the young people, the parents might not necessarily know what their children need to aspire to or aim for. So it's been really informative towards them. Much like your guest speaker was discussing as well, I think it was Hayley. We can't do it by ourselves, and we realise that. So it's having these brilliant conversations, attending these events and sharing the ideas. So it'd be lovely to come along to anything that you have in the future. We also have something called recruitment ambassadors too, and we have a buddy scheme. So recruitment ambassadors is there to support and help spread the message, the Positive Action team message, and to look at events and recruitment and any sort of campaigns anybody else has. And the buddy scheme is there to support people from BAME background and females into policing during their recruitment process of the police, to have somebody to help and support them, go to for advice, etc. That was just a little overview, and it would be lovely just to share contact details with some of you people on this chat.
Is there a way you can share your contact details in the chat?
I can give you my email address if that helps.
Yeah, and is there any sort of events coming up that you'll be able to share? Because I'm sure people will be interested in taking part.
Of course. So literally what we've been doing is a lot on Microsoft Teams. So the IAGs, the youth work. What I plan to do, and I was in contact with Caroline Wiggins, who's over in Epping. She's kindly going to get me onto the next meeting for the CSPs. And it's there where we're really going to discuss events and engagements and the outreach work. So I'm hoping to really, I'm hoping to do this across the county with various different councils. So I think that will be the order of us to do things. I'll go along to that meeting and then I can share what we've sort of decided, if that makes sense.
Perfect. That's amazing. Thanks so much for getting involved.
You're welcome.
I'll come to you, Ayub. I know you had your hand raised next, and then Chris, I'll see you as well.
Thanks, Hayley. That's really, really good. I just really wanted to say this is a really fabulous event, and I really love listening to everyone speak today, bringing their own personal experiences as well as sort of other experiences in the room. But I guess for me, this is more than just about diversity. I mean, this is about diversity, inclusion, and equity, and they all go hand in hand. And I'm really keen to ensure that I'm one of the district councillors at Uttlesford. I am one of the, in fact, I am the only ethnic minority in the council chamber. And I moved to this area in 2018. And have I experienced racism and discrimination? Yeah, of course I have. I experienced it in my younger days. I experience it when I apply for jobs. People see my surname. There's lots of things around this. There's conscious bias. We need to tackle all of those. But I was particularly struck by some of the comments in the chat around, where we came from last summer with the killing of George Floyd, and of course these listening events that we wanted, Louise and I and other colleagues wanted to put together as part of the approach that we wish to take. And I can tell you there was some opposition, but what we have to do is we have to continually talk about these things. We have to challenge them in a positive way and not just talk about diversity in one single sense. It is about diversity. It is about equity and inclusion as well. So really lovely hearing all your voices, seeing all your faces, and long may this continue. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the work you do and acknowledging that. And I think pushing to get these spaces created in the council is really, really important. One of the things I just wanted to add and recognise, just conscious we're over time, but I know we've got some great hands raised and some other comments that are being made, that this isn't always easy. And I think the point that I've made around equity is important for us to acknowledge. Equity, for those of you who might have heard this and not necessarily understand it, is recognising that we've not got level playing fields, and that work needs to be done to address challenges, power imbalances, issues that affect certain people in disproportionate ways. And that's something that needs to be continuously done in order for us to start thinking about diversity, start thinking about inclusion. We need to acknowledge that unequal playing field. So it's a really important point. Chris, I'll come to you.
Hiya. Again, I just echo some of the other comments that have been said already. And I think, it's really important that this event has been put on, and thank you for organising it. It's been great to listen to everybody's input. I noticed that education came up quite a bit in the comments. And it's really interesting because I think some of the points raised are spot on. We have a very narrow curriculum, unfortunately, when it comes to things like diversity and inclusion. We teach a very narrow subject area, and I think it does need diversifying. From my point of view, I don't think it's a hard thing really to do. When you talk about things like the light bulb, and we often talk about Thomas Edison, it's not hard to talk about Lewis Howell Latimer at the same time and present and normalise the success of all groups of people at the same time, as opposed to continually putting out the same stuff, and we end up with a very kind of white-centered history that doesn't celebrate diversity, and I think that's a huge shame. I think from my point of view as an educator, I'm keen on trying to embed a ethos within a school that is inclusive, that is welcoming for everybody, and I think that I'm really interested and really engaged in trying to do as much as we possibly can for that, and would be really interested to work alongside many of you in continuing to develop this, and hopefully make some progress in the right direction. So thank you again for putting on the event, and thanks for hearing me there.
Yeah, I really love what you just said, Chris, and I think looking at some of the comments today, some of the things that the speaker has said, I guess when we're looking at solutions and we're looking at what happens next, some of the things we are thinking about are what can, you know, small things that can be done that may be seen as like symbols, or just little things that where we can create spaces for dialogue and opportunity. But what are also the sort of systemic issues that we need to look at resolving? So, for example, having a Black History Month event at a school is symbolic. It does have an impact, does have value, but looking at curriculum and how it's designed is how we can actually start to tackle systemic issues. So we require doing both. Sometimes it's much easier for us to focus on the little gestures, but we need to acknowledge the broader barriers that are existing. Councillor Trilby.
Sorry.
Sorry, go on, Chris. Actually, I'll come to you and then I'll come to you. Sorry.
I absolutely completely agree with what you said there. And I think that something that most important in schools is actually to continue having the discussion and continually talk about it. And something that, again, I'm really keen on is developing a critical thinking element and asking yourself the question, why is something like that being presented in the media in a certain way? Or who is gaining from something being presented in a certain way? And if we as individuals and adults aren't thinking critically and trying to work out the sources for this different information, then how can we expect children to do that as well? And I think if we can build critical thinking, or if we're willing to think critically ourselves, then we can start to peel back some of those layers as to why we find ourselves in this situation. And we need to do that in schools as well, so that those generations coming up are able to not have any prejudice that kind of is filtered through unconsciously or subconsciously in our daily lives. So sorry for coming back, but thank you. I really agree with what you said.
No, that's really great. We've got someone asking what school you work at. I want to know this as well. I know you did mention it at the beginning, but I didn't note it down.
I work for Dunmow St Mary's Primary School in the middle of Dunmow. So I'll put my email address in there if it's to contact me. Then yeah, I'm really interested to hear loads of different views and how we potentially can support us in this as well as a school. So yeah, do get in contact.
Thank you, and thanks for the work you do. Councillor Trilby, I'll come to you.
Thanks, Hayley. First of all, I'd like to congratulate and thank very much UDC and Kerry and Louise for putting this on. It's been a really valuable, and it's thrown up so much. I mean, there's just endless material there. But I'd like to ride on the back of Eob's mention of equality. I mean, this last year has made it patently obvious, to even those who never open their eyes, how very unequal this country is, and to what extent that is a matter of people's ethnicity. The United Nations Basic Principles and Guidelines to the right to remedy and reparation for the victims of gross violations of international human rights law and serious violations of international law provides for a framework of reparatory justice systems that should include, among other measures, investigation of the facts, official acknowledgement and apology, receipt of answers, and opportunity for victims to speak in a public forum about their experiences and to be actively involved in the reparatory justice process. The country is never going to move smoothly until we address the ghosts skeletons in the cupboard, isn't it? And there's a lot of them. I mean, how many of you lot know that both Prince Philip and the Queen have African antecedents? Do you know? Put a hand up if you know. I mean, it's that sort of ignorance that we have, within the country, and the sort of washing of things. That's all behind us. It's history. It's not, because it's carried on for the last 400, 800 years, and it's still with us today. And until we address it, we'll never be able to get it sorted out. Race, like gender, is a social and psychological construct. It doesn't actually exist. I have this, most probably 99 of the same genes as someone in Outer Mongolia. I mean, we're really all first cousins. But the British, when they were setting up the slavery system, they actually started with Irish slaves and then brought in Africans later. And they didn't want the slaves to get together and rebel because there were 1 or 2 rebellions. So in 1661, an act was brought about to enshrine, if you like, racism, so that they could divide and rule. You know, it's the old divide and rule system. So we've been living on this pernicious myth for a very long time. And I think it's time we seek reparation. And maybe that's something we can look at going forward.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I don't even know where to start with just all the thank yous. It's been really interesting to hear this discussion. As I just said in the chat, and I've said a couple of times today, this is very much the beginning. We have got quite deep today in some of the topics we've talked about. We've heard from people's individual and personal perspectives. We've thought about what we want to change. We've heard about some organisations that are looking to do that. I think one of the things I just want to remind us all is that there is support available. There is obviously community organisations that are here to support. The council is looking to do more work in this space as well. As I mentioned in the chat just now, hopefully this is going to be the start of a few conversations. So if anyone does want to contribute to further discussions on this, get in touch with Kerry. I think that's probably the best thing to do. The recording of this event will be made available as well. We have, whizzed through the hour and a half plus an extra time that we had today. And so I just really appreciate everyone for staying on, for staying engaging, for everyone who shared their really honest and thoughtful views as well. It's been such a pleasure to hear from so many people, and I appreciate everyone giving up their time. But I think we will pretty much leave it there, unless Kerry or Councillor Pepper, you want to close for us? Maybe.
This has been a real education, and how important this would be, this type of platform, to spread to a much wider audience. Thank you to everyone who has taken the time to attend tonight. Hayley for her vibrant personality and hosting this event. Our wonderful local speakers, Samantha, Sanjukta and Marta, presenters from the victim support and snapping the stiletto, and everyone who has contributed, to the discussion. I would also like to thank our officers, Kerry Vinton for organising this event, and Fiona Gardner for her support. Your time and effort has been greatly appreciated. The pandemic has taught us a lot about endurance. It's vitally important we work together as a community, all helping each other in times of need and going forward. Most people in life want the same outcomes. Uttlesford will do everything in our power to make sure everyone feels welcome and that our district is happy, a healthy place where our residents and the wider community can thrive. Where nobody experiences racial, sexual, physical or religious prejudices, or suffers from loneliness or mental health related issues. Uttlesford will seek to provide equal opportunities for everyone. As Sam said, to talk is to heal. Uttlesford is here to listen. So thank you, everybody. Much appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and take care, stay safe. And thank you, everyone, for coming and staying on as well.
Thank you, Hayley. Fantastic.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Hayley. It was really good.